Welcome back to Forgotten Ties. Today, we're diving into a story so chilling, so profoundly heartbreaking, it will make you question everything you thought you knew about fate and family. This isn't just a story. It's a raw, emotional journey into a man's life, a life built on a lie he never knew existed. His name was Elara Thorne, a radiologist, quiet, meticulous, and deeply respected in his field. For 45 years, his world was a predictable sequence of bone scans and X-rays, a routine so familiar it was almost a part of him. But behind the crisp white coat and the steady hands was a man haunted by a different kind of scan, an internal one of his own life. He was an only child, or so he believed. His parents, now long gone, had always painted a picture of a small, self-contained family, a perfect triangle of love and dedication. He'd never questioned it. Why would he? His childhood memories were filled with quiet Sunday mornings and long, summer road trips. He had a dog named Oscar, a first crush on a girl with a freckled nose, and a high school diploma with a gold seal. Normalcy. That's all he had ever known. But normalcy, as Ethan was about to discover, is often just a fragile facade. The first crack appeared not on an old photograph or a dusty letter, but in the sterile, high-tech environment of the Mercy West Hospital. It was a Tuesday. The day was drawing to a close, and Ethan was finishing up a final review of the day's patient list. As a senior radiologist, this was his ritual, a last check for any anomalies. He scrolled through the names: Johnson, Miller, Rodriguez, Smith, and then a name that made his blood run cold. It was a simple name, an elegant one: Elara Thorne. Thorne, his last name, is not an uncommon name, but it's not exactly widespread either. But what made his heart pound was the next piece of information on the screen. The date of birth. It was the exact same date as his, March 17, 1980. The address listed was in a different state, a small town called Willow Creek. But the coincidence was staggering. Two people born on the same day with the same last name. It had to be a mistake, a system error, maybe a distant cousin? He tried to rationalize it away, but a knot of dread was tightening in his stomach. He clicked on her file, his fingers trembling slightly. The image loaded slowly, a grainy, black and white scan of a chest cavity. He wasn't supposed to be doing this. Patient confidentiality was paramount. But the pull was irresistible. He zoomed in, his trained eye immediately picking up on the subtle, undeniable signs of advanced cystic fibrosis. The disease had ravaged her lungs, leaving a lace-like pattern of scarring. It was an illness often diagnosed in early childhood, a condition that spoke of a lifetime of struggle. He continued to scroll, his professional detachment shattering into a million pieces. The file contained medical history, a lifetime of hospital stays, and a list of prescriptions that read like a chemical cocktail. But it was the notes from the attending physician that truly hit him. "Elara has been a warrior," one note read. "Her resilience is a testament to the human spirit." The words were an indictment, a whispered accusation against a life he had never known. This woman, this Elara Thorne, had lived a life of pain and suffering, while he, Ethan, had lived a life of unremarkable health and comfort. And they were born on the same day with the same name. He felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't a mistake. This was a secret, a terrible, life-altering secret that his parents had taken to their graves. And the more he looked, the more he realized the truth was even darker than he could ever have imagined. He sat there, in the quiet hum of the radiology department, the glowing screens his only company. The names on the patient list blurred. All he could see was Elara Thorne, his twin, the twin he never knew he had. The silence of the room felt deafening, filled with 1,000 unasked questions. What happened? Why was he kept in the dark? Did she know about him? The thought of her, frail and fighting for every breath, while he was living his comfortable, oblivious life, was a punch to the gut. The story of his life, his identity, had just been ripped apart at the seams. And this was only the beginning. The discovery of Elara's file sent Ethan into a spiraling obsession. The professional, composed radiologist was gone, replaced by a man consumed by a frantic search for answers. He couldn't shake the image of her X-ray, the ghostly outline of her damaged lungs, a mirror of the secret that was now suffocating him. He spent his nights not sleeping, but hunched over his laptop, delving into a digital world of records and archives. He felt like a detective in his own life, piecing together fragments of a past he had been intentionally denied. He started with the obvious, Willow Creek, the small town where Elara's file said she lived. A quick online search revealed a series of articles about the local hospital, and buried deep within a newsletter from a decade ago, he found it. A fundraising gala for the Elara Thorne wing, a new section of the hospital dedicated to patients with chronic respiratory illnesses. The accompanying picture showed a frail but beautiful woman with piercing blue eyes, the same eyes that stared back at him in the mirror every morning. It was her. His heart ached with a mixture of grief and fury. Grief for a lifetime of lost moments, and fury at the parents who had stolen those moments from him. His next step was a direct one, reckless and driven by an insatiable need for the truth. He called the hospital in Willow Creek. He couldn't reveal his identity, so he fabricated a story, pretending to be a medical researcher working on a study of rare congenital diseases. He asked to speak with one of Elara's former nurses. After a few frustrating transfers, he was connected to an older woman named Margaret, who had cared for Elara for years. Margaret's voice was warm, tinged with a deep sadness. "Elara was a special girl," she said, her voice a soft hum. "So strong, so full of life despite everything. She was an orphan, grew up in the system." The word orphan hit him with the force of a physical blow. An orphan? But how? He and Elara were born on the same day. He fumbled for an explanation. "Her parents, they passed away when she was young?" he asked, his voice tight. Margaret sighed. "No, dear. They abandoned her right after she was born. Said they couldn't handle the medical expenses. It was heartbreaking." Ethan's world fractured. Abandoned. He had a twin sister born with a devastating illness, and their parents had simply left her behind. He remembered his mother's quiet, reserved nature, his father's distant kindness. He had always interpreted it as a sign of their gentle, traditional upbringing. Now he saw it as something else entirely, the carefully constructed wall of two people haunted by an unforgivable act. They had chosen him, the healthy, unburdened one. They had given him a life of privilege and opportunity, all while their other child, their daughter, was left to face a lifetime of pain and solitude. He hung up the phone, the receiver feeling impossibly heavy in his hand. The truth was a crushing weight. He wasn't just an only child. He was the chosen one, the one who lived while the other was left to die. The more he learned, the more the narrative of his life unraveled. He discovered that his parents, Henry and Elara Thorne, had indeed had twins. The birth records were meticulously buried in a small-town archive, a testament to their efforts to erase the past. The records stated that the twins, Ethan and Elara, were both born with a high risk of congenital disorders. But while Ethan was a picture of health, Elara's diagnosis was immediate and severe: cystic fibrosis. The hospital notes from that time spoke of a frantic young couple, overwhelmed and terrified. And then, a few short weeks later, a note from their family doctor, a kind-hearted man who had sadly passed away years ago, simply stated that the Thornes have made a difficult decision regarding the care of their infant daughter Elara. A difficult decision. That was the euphemism his parents had used to justify their abandonment. A decision that had condemned a fragile baby to a life of pain and institutional care. A decision that had bought him, Ethan, a life of comfort and normalcy. A life that now felt tainted and hollow. The grief he felt for Elara was immense, but the anger towards his parents was a fire that burned through him. They hadn't just abandoned her. They had erased her. They had built their happy family on the foundation of her suffering, on the lie of his solitude. He had a twin sister he never knew existed, and her life was a testament to the secret he was now fighting to unearth. The weight of the secret grew heavier with each passing day. Ethan couldn't shake the image of Elara's face from the newspaper article. The ghost of a smile on her lips, her eyes, his eyes, holding a lifetime of unspoken pain. His own life, once a well-ordered tapestry, was now a tangled mess of threads, pulled apart by the force of this revelation. The pristine white walls of his apartment felt like the bars of a cage, and the quiet hum of his refrigerator was a mocking reminder of the silence that had defined his childhood. He knew he had to go to Willow Creek. He needed to see it, to feel the air she breathed, to walk the ground she walked on. The 2-hour drive felt like a lifetime. He passed by endless fields and small towns, each one a stark contrast to the bustling city he called home. Willow Creek was a quiet, unassuming place, a town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were buried deep, like old bones in the earth. The hospital was a small, brick building, older than the one he worked at, but with a palpable sense of community. He walked through the main doors, his heart a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He felt like an intruder, a thief of his own family's history. He approached the reception desk, a kind-faced woman with a name tag that read Linda, looking up at him with a gentle smile. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. He fumbled for words, a lie forming on his tongue, but then he looked around the lobby. The walls were adorned with framed photographs of community events, of nurses and patients laughing, of a world he never knew. His eyes fell on a large plaque near the entrance to the new wing, the Elara Thorne Memorial Wing. A memorial. The truth hit him with a fresh wave of grief, a punch that stole the air from his lungs. She was gone. The sister he had just found, the one he had been so desperate to meet, was dead. He felt the world spin. Linda, seeing the color drain from his face, quickly brought him a glass of water and led him to a small, private waiting area. He told her a half-truth, that he was a distant relative, a cousin he had lost touch with. He didn't have the courage to tell her the whole truth. He couldn't. The weight of his parents' life felt too heavy, too shameful. Linda, with a soft, knowing look, began to talk. She told him about Elara, about her strength and her grace. "She was the heart of this place," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion. "She fought for every single day. She volunteered here for years, even when she could barely breathe. She was a light." And then Linda said something that made his blood run cold. She always talked about a twin, said she had a feeling he was out there somewhere, that she would find him someday. The words were a dagger to his heart. Elara had known. She had felt his existence, a ghost in her world, a twin she was convinced she would one day meet. And while she was searching for him, he was living his life, oblivious, a world away. Linda then led him to a small garden just outside the hospital, a memorial garden dedicated to Elara. A simple stone bench was inscribed with her name and a quote, "The ties that bind us are not always of blood, but of the heart." It was a beautiful, poignant tribute, but for Ethan, it was a searing indictment. The ties that bound him to his sister were not of the heart. They were of a secret, of a lie, of a choice that had separated them for a lifetime. He sat on the bench, the quiet of the garden a stark contrast to the storm raging inside him. He had come here looking for answers, and he had found them. But the answers were more painful than the questions. He had found his twin sister, only to learn that he was too late. The story was over. But for Ethan, it was just beginning. He looked at the plaque, at the name he shared, the date he shared, and he felt an overwhelming wave of regret. Regret for 1,000 conversations they never had, for 1,000,000 memories they never made. He had spent his life believing he was alone, and in a way he was. But now he was alone for a different reason. He was haunted by the ghost of a twin sister, a woman who had lived and died without ever knowing the truth, without ever knowing him. The story of Elara Thorne was a tragedy, but the story of Ethan Thorne was a testament to the devastating power of a lie. The journey back from Willow Creek was a blur of highway lights and a mind replaying a lifetime of missed moments. Ethan couldn't bring himself to go back to his old life. The pristine apartment, the orderly work, all of it felt like a lie. He had to do something. He had to honor the sister he never knew he had. His first step was a difficult one, a visit to his parents' final resting place. The twin headstones of Henry and Eleanor Thorne stood in a quiet cemetery, their names a stark reminder of the secret they had taken with them. He didn't feel anger anymore, just a profound, bone-deep sadness. He laid a single red rose on each grave, a silent act of both forgiveness and farewell. He was no longer their son in the way they had intended. He was Elara's brother. He began the process of righting the wrongs of the past, as best he could. He contacted the hospital in Willow Creek anonymously at first, and then with his full identity. He established a trust fund in Elara's name, a foundation to help other patients with cystic fibrosis. It was a small act, a gesture of atonement, but it was all he had. The money was a symbol, a way to use the life he had been given to honor the one she had been denied. He worked with Linda and the other nurses, listening to their stories about Elara, collecting every memory, every anecdote, every whisper of a life he had missed. He learned that she had been a painter, a lover of abstract art, and that she had a fierce, unyielding sense of humor. He saw the world through her eyes, a world of beautiful imperfections and fleeting moments. The final piece of his journey led him to an old box in his parents' attic, a box he had never bothered to open. It was labeled memorabilia. Inside, he found old-school reports, faded photographs, and a small, leather-bound journal. It was his mother's. The first few pages were mundane, but then the entries changed. They became a chronicle of her grief, her struggle, and her heartbreaking decision. She wrote about her love for both her children, her fear of not being able to provide for a sick baby, and the devastating choice she and his father had made. "We are two people with one heart, broken into two pieces," she had written. "We gave one life to live, and the other to love from a distance." The words weren't a justification, but a confession. They were a testament to her pain, a pain she had carried for a lifetime. He didn't forgive them fully, not yet, but he understood. The lie hadn't just separated him from his sister. It had haunted them all. His parents had been living a life haunted by a ghost, the ghost of the daughter they had left behind. And he, in turn, had been living a life built on a foundation of sand, a life that was now crumbling. The story of Elara Thorne was a tragedy, but her memory became his purpose. He's still a radiologist, but his work is different now. He volunteers at the Elara Thorne Memorial Wing, working with young patients, sharing stories, and offering a kind word. He found a purpose in his past, a way to turn the pain into something meaningful. The story of Ethan and Elara Thorne is not a story about abandonment, but a story about connection, about the invisible threads that tie us to one another, even when we don't know they exist. It's a reminder that we are all part of a larger, interconnected tapestry, and sometimes the most profound discoveries are found in the most unexpected of places. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt the echo of a forgotten past, please take a moment to hit that like button. We're working hard to bring you stories that matter, stories that reveal the depths of the human experience. So, go ahead and subscribe to Forgotten Ties, and don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss an update. There's a story behind every face, a secret behind every smile, and we're here to find them,